friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Totally Awesome. Also be using a couple of leaves from Jump for Joy and the new Lawn Fawn Nitpicky Fall 6x6 paper pad. I've stamped my images out with Memento Tuxedo Black ink on some Copic friendly cardstock since I'll be coloring with my Copic markers today. I'm starting with my log, and for that I'm using E43, E44, E47, and E49. I'm imagining that my light source is directly overhead, so I'm doing my shadow down at the bottom with that E49 just all the way across. And then I'm going to bring in the E47 to blend that out. I'm going to make sure to scrub over the edge of that E49 to really soften that up and help the transition. And then I'll come in with the E44, just carrying that color up towards the top and saving a little bit of room for that E43 to be my highlight. I also did add a little bit of that E44 on the edge of the piece that's sticking up just for a little bit of shadow there as well. And then while I have those markers out, I'm also going to use them to color in my cattails. Again, starting up from the bottom and a little bit in the direction that they're facing away from as well. And then just blending up toward the top with each of those colors. And even though there are 4, I'm just going to color 2 on screen to save a little bit of time in the video. For the grasses of the cattails, I'm using G28 and G24. I added a little bit of that G28 down at the bottom and then just blending upward with that G24. And again, I will color in the rest of those grasses and cattails as well with those same shades. And then when I get to the lily pad, I'm going to introduce a 3rd shade. It's going to be the G21. So I'm still going to start with that G28 and then blend upward with the G24 as my midtone, and then I'll save a little bit of room up at the top for that G21. For my water lily, I'm using V000 and V01 and just doing a really light bit of shading. I'm not coloring in the entire flower because I want some of it to be white, kind of leaving the tips white. And I'm also leaving the petals on the inside of the flower white for now. And then I also decided to add a little bit of that V000 to the fly's wings. And then it wasn't showing up quite enough, so I added the V01 as well, just for something different. Now I'm bringing in V13, V15, and V17. I wanted to make this kind of a fall birthday card, so I decided to add just a couple of leaves to kind of change up the scenery. So I'm doing one of my leaves with that color, and then I'll also use the V13 on the inside of the water lily. For the frogs, I'm using VG01, VG03, VG05, VG07, and VG09. I'm starting with the VG01 and just coloring in their bellies and the little spots on the leaping frog's back. And then I'm going to start with the VG07 as my darkest shade, so I'll lay in my shadows with that. And I'm just going to color 1 on screen since they're all pretty much the same. I have to say though, I have had this card idea in mind for such a long time. When my boys were in preschool, they all went to the same preschool, so they had the same teachers. They used to sing this little song about little speckled frogs. It's a counting song. Little speckled frogs sitting on a log, eating some most delicious bugs, and then one by one they jump into the pool where it's nice and cool. And I always just loved to hear them sing that song, so that was the inspiration for today's card. So like I mentioned, I started with the VG07 as my darkest shade, and then I blended upward with the VG05 and then filled in the face with the VG03. And then I'm going back with my darkest shade, the VG09, and I'm going to add in those speckles so that they go along with the song. So I actually used the VG09 and the VG07 just to have some variety with the little speckles, and I mostly stuck to the shadowed areas. That's typically the way I like to do it. That way the highlighted areas stay nice and bright. So I have 2 more leaves to color to put on my card so it has that fall feel. And for the largest one, I'm using YR04, YR07, and YR09. The other leaf I'm going to color red, and I'm using R24, R29, and R39. So I use the R39 as the darkest, and then R29 is the mid-tone, and the R24 just has that little pinky tone to it to give it a different look. And then last but not least, I just have my little dragonfly, and I'm using BG45 and BG49 for that. I used the BG49 closest to its body and then blended out with the BG45, and then I did do a double layer of each of those just to intensify the depth. And now I'll just trim these out with the matching dies. So if you guys watch my channel, you know that one of my favorite craft supplies is pattern paper, so I wanted to highlight that with today's scene building, which is not something I typically do, but I thought I'd just do something a little bit out of the ordinary. So I've trimmed down some watercolor wishes paper with the Lawn Fawn outside in stitch rectangle stackables, and I also did die cut another white panel just to strengthen that up a bit. Then I used the meadow borders for the grass and the simple stitch hillside borders for my pond. And then after I thought about it, I decided I wanted to have another grass panel, so I used the grassy border for that one. And I'm gluing them all down with some Tombow Mono multi-glue. And all those pattern papers other than the background came from the Nitpicky Fall 6x6 that I showed at the very beginning. So now I'm going to begin to adhere my images, and again I'm using some of that Tombow Mono liquid glue. I'm starting with my log since that's kind of the focus of the scene, and then I'm going to add 2 of my frogs to the top of that. I'll use the 2 sitting frogs, the big and the little. So I have them side by side, and then there's just a little space at the end where the third little guy is leaping off from. So I'm going to have him kind of bounding over to the right hand side. So he's ready to make a splash into the pool where it's nice and cool. And then to set the scene a little bit more, I'm going to add the lily pad off to the right behind him and the water lily kind of on top of that. The cattails are all going to get tucked in behind the top grass panel, so they're on the far side of the bank of the pond. So I'm using the 2 largest ones to frame the left and the right, and then I'll add a smaller one on the left and a little bit of a kind of grass sprig sticking out of that. Maybe that's like a cattail that hasn't quite blossomed. I don't know if they blossom, but anyway. And then on the right hand side, I'm just going to mix it up a little bit so they're not exactly the same. So I'll put the grass in between the 2 cattails. And then my leaves are going to be just kind of caught in the grasses where they've blown around. So I added 1 to the left, 1 to the right, and 1 kind of in the center. The flies are so tiny that I thought the easiest thing would be to add a little dab of glue where I wanted them to go and then just set them down into that. And then to complete the scene, I'll add my dragonfly, and then I'll just pop this entire panel into my MISTI so that I can stamp my sentiment. I'm using Lawn Fawn Walnut ink, and I'm stamping out the Have a Happy Birthday combination. And I did stamp that down a couple of times to get a really nice bold impression. And then while I have my MISTI out, I'll also stamp the inside of my card. So I'm using Lawn Fawn's Noble Fur cardstock and the Noble Fur ink. And I'm going to stamp out one of the frogs and the little dragonfly and her trail and the sentiment that says, "You're totally awesome." To assemble my card, I've cut down one additional piece of pattern paper. This one is going to tie all the other colors together, and also the coloring of the leaves and the different elements of the card. So I just glued that down to the entire card base, and I added some foam tape to the back of my focal panel, so I will pop that up right in the center, so it just leaves a little bit of that pattern paper showing around the outside edge. And that is going to complete our card for today. There's another peek at the inside. There's quite a lot going on, so I didn't want to add any other embellishments and kind of overdo it. So leave me a comment down below if you've ever heard the Speckled Frog song and if it warms your heart the way that it warms mine. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please be sure to thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. You can ring that notification bell. There's lots of ways to show your support if you enjoy the content that you find here. Here's 2 extra videos if you want to keep watching. I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.